it's Mrs. Smith, and today we're gonna sit back and throw some shade. No, just kidding. We're gonna do shading though. Shading is really a difficult part of your art process, but it's like playing an instrument. The more you do it, the better you get. So I wanna teach you some fundamentals of shading, and we're gonna go over light source, shadows, all that kind of stuff. Try to make it fun and easy for you. And also we're going to go over the last portion of our quarter here. So we have some drills we're going to do. We have a project also. I'm going to teach you how to enlarge something using a grid system. But first we want to get started with our grayscale and learn some terms. You know, I went to art school and I think I had a whole semester on color theory, and it wasn't even until way into the class that we even introduced some actual colors. It was mostly black and gray and white that we worked with. And there's a lot more to it. There's a lot of things in the grayscale that you may not know, and you'll start to see this when you go out and look at maybe furniture or walls and how things are painted and everything. So you'll see that a gray is not just a gray. It could be a warm gray or it could be a cool gray. So a warm gray is going to bring in more of your brownish, maybe even a slight greenish tone to the gray. Whereas a cool gray is going to bring in more like a blue, okay? So I tried to get all grayed out for you today. So I'm wearing a gray shirt that is more on the cool gray side. I even put my gray nail polish on. I have this here, which is just going to be like a charcoal gray. This is more of your solid gray, okay, where it's a percent of a 100% black. So that maybe this is in the 85%, okay, I'm gonna guess. All right, and I really enjoy doing black and white work. Once you get that down and know where your shadows are and where your light source is, and you refer to things as shapes, then your art takes on a whole new look, okay? So when you take something like, let's just say I wanted to shade a fish. I'm going to decide what shape does a fish resemble. It's going to maybe the cylinder. Okay, so when I learn how to shade a cylinder, it's going to help me when I shade something that is maybe, you know, rounded like that. Okay, here's a few of my pieces. I do like to paint in black and white and then add a pop of color. So these are some prints of some of my pieces here so that you can see where I've added my pop of color. Okay, here's another one here. This is more on the cool grays that are in here. All right, another one here, all that shading in the feathers and the wings. Another one. So to make that look like concrete and the statue. This one has just a little bit of the gray in there. So the Wednesday Addams piece. And another one of the skull. You'll be doing a skull later on in this lesson. All right. So as we get started, let's go over the tools that we need. Okay, everyone, let's go over our supplies. First of all, I want you to refer to pages 24 through 27 in your handouts. That is your worksheets that we're going to be working off of. You will need for this your ruler that was enclosed in your packet. You will also need a regular number 2 pencil with your eraser. You will need the pencil that's in there called the ebony pencil, okay? That is the gray pencil with the thicker lead. I believe there's a cap eraser on there too. And this lead here is going to give us the really dark black colors, okay? That's why it's called the ebony pencil. So the softer the lead, the darker it's going to be, okay? So remember that. If you have a really hard lead, it's going to be a lighter color gray. So when you see those pencil kits that are in different stores that have all the different pencils in there, those are where you can get all your shades of gray, okay? But for this, all we need really are these 2 pencils to get started. You'll have an eraser, and then you'll also have a really funny looking tool in there that looks like this. These are called, actual name for them is a tortillon. Okay, but most people refer to them as a smudge stick, a blender, things like that. So you will have that. This is like a compressed cardboard, so please don't put this in your pencil sharpener. This is always going to remain with some lead on there, some graphite on there. And I'll show you a trick to use that graphite in certain situations. But those are the tools. You might want to have some napkins handy for this. And then I like to, when I'm shading, I don't want to just take one sheet of paper on a hard surface and try to shade. I do like to pat it with something. So if you have a sketchbook that you want to put underneath it, or even just to grab a few sheets of paper and put that underneath and put this on top, that would be great. That would help you really get started and have a little bit of cushion under there, okay? So that's what we need to get started. Now let's do some drills. Okay, on page 24, we are going to learn a value scale, a graduated scale, and how to shade a sphere, which is a 3D circle, right? So how better to illustrate this than to show you with my used stress ball that I've been using quite a bit. But I want to put a light source on it. It's a sphere, and I want to show you how this works. My light source is coming in from the left over here. So over here is where the main source is, and you can see the shadow that it casts behind it just as I move the camera here. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you, I'm going to change the light source. Now it's going on top of the stress ball, and you can see where the shadow is at the bottom. And now I'm going to bring it over towards the right, and you see how the shadow then shifts and my light area is over to the right. So this is just a little bit of an illustration so that you can see. I'm going to move it back now, and look how that shadow just goes with the light source. So this is the lightest area is on the left hand side right now over here. You see that? That's the lightest area. And then it goes over to the darker side here, and this shadow over here is called a cast shadow that it makes. So we're going to do that with our shading now. Okay, I've got page 24 here, and I put some padding underneath this so I can get started. The first thing we're going to do is turn our page, and we're going to do this value scale. The value scale goes from pure white to the deepest black you can get, and then these are all the shades in between. So obviously the first one we don't need to do. We are trying to match what is in these squares, okay? So the last one will be super easy. We're going to draw hard with the ebony pencil. Now I want to show you the correct way to use your pencil. Instead of holding it like this, like a regular pencil, you want to take and put one finger on top so that it looks like this. It might look a little awkward, but that way you can use the whole side of your graphite there when you're going to shade. So it's all in the wrist. So I'm going to go from a lighter to a darker, all the way down, so I can go really feather it out light at the top. If I do that and I use my ebony pencil now, if I use my tortillon or blending tool, I can go in there now and shade that, and you can see that I get a much smoother blend now going. If I were to use my pencil this way and try to do some drawing like this and then lighten it up, I'm always going to see those lines. I'm never going to be able to get a nice smooth blend. So you can see the difference between doing that. So we definitely want to use the pencil like this, and then you can use the tortillon or the blending tool the same way with that forefinger on top, okay, so that you can get it nice and flat for blending. All right, now before I had told you a little trick I was going to show you. Graphite stays on the end of this. So you can use this in certain places to shade without ever even having to use either one of your pencils. So remember, the softer lead is going to be the darker colors. So I'm going to use that in the darker areas. And then the hard lead is going to be the one that gives me the lighter colors. So right off the bat, I may be able to take my tortillon, and I'm going to my blending stick, and I'm just going to lightly use that to put in this section right here. So I can get that really light, and I can go a little bit darker as I go. And I don't even need to use a blending of it afterwards. I'm using the blending tool as graphite. Okay, so that one I have matched. So now I'm going to move on. I still can use this and just press a little harder. So if you have a brand new one, then you're just going to use your softer lead right now. So I'm going to get that in there to match. All right, now the next one is a little bit darker. So I'm going to continue using this, and notice I'm using my pencil in that same method where I'm using it on its side, and I'm always coloring in the same direction. I'm definitely not going like this way, then this way. I don't want that scribbled look. And then I can get my blending tool and lightly, start out light, blend it so that I can match that tone, okay? And afterwards, always clean up your work, take your eraser and just erase those edges there and try to clean that up. Now I'm gonna go to try to get this one. This one I might now start to use this ebony pencil. And again, you can always add more graphite. It's a little bit harder to subtract it if you go in really dark right away. So I'm going to blend it and see how close I am at this point. And it's getting closer. All right, I think that's a good match there. All right, and then I can move on and make this one be a little bit darker. So again, I'm using my pencil on its side, coloring in the same direction. All right, getting in those corners so I can get the whole thing done. And then going back in afterwards and cleaning this up. Okay, so I have a good value scale going right now that's going along there, and I'll just continue. When I get to the last one, I am going to be going as dark as I can with my ebony pencil in that last box. Okay, so just press it down, lay that down as hard as you can. Now you can go back in any corner areas with the tip of that a little bit better. Okay, and you're still going to blend it even though it's on there really dark. So you're still going to get your blending tool and get that blended nice and smooth. Okay, and then you just have a few more left to do. So the goal is to match this up here, and you're going to do that nice slow blend there. If for some reason you do something that's a little too dark, you can take your bigger eraser and you can go in there, and I like to hold it flat and erase so I can get a bigger area out. So if I did something that's too dark, let's just say I'm going to put this down right here. I have blended it, and whoa, it's way too dark. If I just go in with the corner of my eraser, I'm going to get those lines again, right? And it's going to be really hard to blend that again. But you can back it out. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. You can back it out by going in with the flat side and getting a whole lot of graphite off of there now, and then you can blend it again. And now you can see you don't see those streaks, okay? So those are just a few tips for you. And now we're going to move on to shading our sphere. Okay, we're moving on to the sphere now. And it's important that we look at our light source. Now we're going to get into that. So if you look at our sample down here, the light source is over here. This is where the light bulb, the sun, whatever it is that's making that light, the moonlight, whatever, is hitting that part of the object over there. And then it's the brightest, and it slowly goes into a nice darkness at the bottom here. But you don't see stripes. It's something that's a very smooth blend. That's called a graduated scale, okay? That's gonna blend really nicely, and it's just, you're not gonna see lines in there. So what I like to do really lightly with the number 2 pencil is go in and say, okay, well, they've already illustrated we're doing the same thing because the cast shadow is behind, so my light source will be over here. I'm gonna go ahead and just make like a little circle right there as to where my light source is. See if you can see that, just a little circle. It makes this look like a giant olive or an 8-ball, that kind of look to it. So I know that this is going to be my lightest, this is going to be my darkest. So when you're blending, it's almost like you're gonna take and put an imaginary axis through there so that that's where the center is all the way. Okay, so when you go to blend this now, this is really important. You're blending in a circular motion, not as lines that go back and forth like a stripe. You're doing a circular motion with this. So I'm going to start out here, and I'm going to use the side of this pencil, and I'm going to get that circular motion going. All right, so I'm going to go round. It's almost like you're doing a smiley face and making that nice and round. Okay, then I'm going to switch over to my ebony pencil, and I'm going to lighten my wrist just a little bit, and again I'm going to get that blended in that circular motion. Okay, and now I'm going to start putting a little bit more pressure on my wrist to blend that in more, and now it's going to get really dark at the bottom. So another word I want to introduce to you is contrast. Contrast is when in your picture you have an area that is pretty light, almost white, and you also have an area that is really dark, like almost black. So a good picture will have nice contrast. If all you see is just all the in-between shades of gray, there's really not that much contrast to your picture. So a lot of times I'll say bump up the contrast, which will mean go back into these dark areas and really lay down that black where it should be. And then if you need to, lighten up those areas. All right, so now I've done pretty much a good scale there that goes from light all the way to dark, and I'm going to blend in the same direction that I drew. So I have to do that circular motion again, and now I'm going to bring it up into that little circle that I drew. All right, so now I'm going to go back and forth in that circular motion. You can clean up your edges later, okay? And now I'm going to get all of that. You can go in and just get those edges a little bit more. All right, and if I want to, I can erase out a little bit of this area in here. Some people like to use their fingers to blend. You can do that if you want to. Go back and try to blend. There's like an old school thoughts. Some people don't like to do it because there's like oils in your hands and that can affect the picture. But you know what? It all depends what you like. If you don't want to get dirty at all, you could use a cotton ball, or you could use Kleenex, a napkin. All right, and then you're going to go in and clean that up, right? Get that all cleaned up, your edges. And there's one little area here that has a little bit of darkness to it. There we go, that I want to blend. Okay, so now I've got that going, and now I need to do my cast shadow. Again, if I want to get that a little bit lighter, I'm going to bring my whole eraser in on its side and try to lighten that up just a little bit. All right, and then I can go back in and blend it. Circular motion though, notice I'm doing that circular motion for blending. All right, there we go. So I have a little bit more light in there. And then I'm going to do the cast shadow, which is going to be really dark. It's going to be darkest right underneath it, and as it goes out, it'll start to lighten up a little bit. So since this is a smaller area, I'm using just the tip of the pencil there. And notice how I didn't go all the way to the end with the graphite. I stopped because I know I can pull it from that end over there. All right, so now I've got my cast shadow, got that, and then you can just go in if you want to do that little bit of shading around it. You can just go like this and get that little bit of shading to go all around the sphere, and then just blend it out just a little bit with your finger. Okay, all right, so now you have finished your sphere. Okay, we're moving on to page 25 in our packet, and we're going to be learning how to shade these shapes. Remember when I said that when you go to shade something, you would like to be able to relate it back to a shape maybe that would help you, remind you how to shade things. So if you're doing a face, you know, you're going to want to shade like it's a sphere. You want to find out where that light source is. That's what's going to make your image look three-dimensional. All the shading is going to make it look round. It'll make the box look like a cube, or the square look like a cube, and so on. So we're going to go in now. The top one, you're not going to do anything to. Top row, nothing. You're just looking at how you draw that form, okay? The second row is how to shade it. And the third one is for you to do all on your own, okay? So let's take a look. We are going to draw now a cylinder, cone, pyramid, cube, and sphere. Let me get a little closer so you can see. Okay, I'm going to start out by drawing all of my images first, okay, all of my shapes. So the cylinder, it'll show you up here. You're going to start with that oval at the top, and it will also have an oval at the bottom, same size, okay, and then you can connect it with two parallel lines. Now we're not going to see this back line, so you can go ahead and erase that. The cone is pretty simple. You start out looking like you're making a letter A and put like a smiley face at the bottom. The pyramid is a little bit more difficult, okay? The pyramid is going to be like an A that's sideways with another triangle that comes out. So you're going to get that going like that for your pyramid. Okay, it looks like a V kind of at the bottom. The cube is a little tricky. All right, I want you to practice doing that. If you get that top box, it's almost like a sideways diamond, and then you can go in and get the bottom. Now this line is going to come up, this line is going to come over like this, and then afterwards you can erase what you need to. A sphere, do your best job drawing a circle. And since you already had practice doing the circle, that one should be fairly easy for you. Mine looks a little fuzzy there. Okay, so I have all my shapes drawn out. So I'm going to look to this now for how to shade it. When I look at this, I see that my light source is right in the front here going down the middle. So I am going to use my ebony pencil, and I'm going to shade the sides a little bit there and a little bit in the back. All right, and this is, you can go ahead and get your smudge tool now and just go in. Don't go too heavy on it. Lighten up that wrist so when you go to do that middle part, now you can darken it up a little bit. And then you're going to do this one in this direction at the top. All right, so you can still see that line. Now if I need to, I can take my cap eraser, go back in and just drag this a little bit, especially in the middle if I want to get it a little bit lighter in there. All right, and then you can see just a little bit of that darker line at the top there. All right, so I have one done. I'm going to do the same thing here. The cone looks like it's shaded mostly at the top area here, so I'm going to leave that as my lighter and then do the sides a little bit darker. So go back in, do those sides a little bit darker, and then you can see it's going to get, so I'm going to go in. Remember, I want that contrast, so I might bump it up just a little bit over there, and then you can fan it out a little bit. All right, so that's as much as I'm going to do with the pencils, and I'm going to do the rest with this. Do that side, and then this side, a little bit more at the bottom here. And then I can go back out some of that again. And go back and get that just a little bit more blended now. There we go. Get that at the bottom. Okay, and then I can take in, it looks like there's a little line kind of that goes in there. You can make that little line a little bit more predominant in your picture there. So we're going to keep doing that all the way down. Take a look at where the light source is. It's coming in over here. This one looks like it has two light sources, which that is a thing. And then this one here, your light source is mostly coming in from this direction, right? So this is the farthest away. So that's going to be the darkest area. And your sphere this time, The light source is at the top, so you could draw, if you want to, that little circle up there so you know how to get started. Okay, page 26 has a little what's called still life setup. It's all objects that are placed together that you would have to shade, okay? So what you want to do is decide where you want your light source to be, and I want you to draw an arrow where your light source is. So let's say for me, I'm going to say my light source is coming in on this side, so I'm going to draw my arrow that way. All right, so now I know where my light source is. If my light source is coming in this way, the shadows are going to be on this side here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I can maybe even go in and kind of just like outline where these shadows might be, that might be coming on these pieces. Okay, I'm going to start out like that. My light source is over here, so that area might be like right about there. All right, so that means this side's going to be really lighter and this side is going to be darker. So I'm going to start to shade this now in accordance to where my light source is. So this is more like a cylinder. So I'm going to come in with that darker area over here. And I want that graduated value scale where it goes from that to light to almost white over there. Okay, so I'm going to start out like that. Same with the sphere now. This is, remember, this is the lightest area here. And then it's slowly going to get darker and darker as it goes down. So I'm going to remember this, I have to do in that curved motion. I don't want it to look like stripes on the ball. So you definitely want that curved motion. And look how I'm using my pencil on its side. All right, so again, that light source is coming in over here. There will be a little bit of a shadow coming on that ball as well, okay? So I can get that in there on top of that a little bit darker. And I'll blend all this afterwards, okay? Light source is on top here, so this side is going to be the lighter, going from that into a little bit darker here. Definitely darker on this side because you don't see much of that light. Okay, and this side there's no light, so maybe it's just a little bit lighter on top, but it goes pretty much into a darker area pretty quick. But you want that value scale, right? Because you don't want it to look like it's a stripe. We want to avoid stripes. And this would be pretty dark as well over here. Not all the way dark, okay? So you can see it's starting to come together with the different lights and sources that are on here. So over here, it's going to be lighter in this area and then go into a darker. I'm not even going to put much over there. This is going to be darker. This will get a little bit of shadow from that, but it will definitely go from a lighter to a darker over on this side. And then this side here is going to be pretty dark. It can be a little bit lighter at the top and then go down to a much darker at the bottom. And notice how I was always trying to color in the same direction as much as I could. Okay, and then you can go in and make this your cast shadow be darker, and that's when it's okay to use the pencil in this direction or not flat when you're doing something that's pretty dark. And that's right around the object, and then it will feather up just a little bit and be a little bit lighter on the fringes on the ends of it. Okay, so this will be really dark in here, really dark in here, and then kind of feather up to a little bit lighter. Okay, so now I've pretty much done all my shading how I think it's going to look with that light source, and now I will go back in with my blending tool and really see what I need to do. So I will start blending that in the same direction that I drew. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to feather this out a little bit lighter over here. Okay, so I have that. This, remember, I've got a shade in that same direction that I drew. So definitely want to go back in and lighten up some of that sphere at the top. Okay, let's go over here. Go in the same direction that I drew. That's so important. All right, now I'm going to turn it so I can get this all blended. It's kind of a good arm workout, right? Okay, and then I'm going to go over here now, a little bit lighter where that light is coming in. I've got some cleaning up of some edges to do for sure. And then I'm going to do this last, do the darkest areas last, because all that graphite's going to get on your smudge stick, right? Okay, so now I can go in and say, okay, there's a little too much darkness everywhere, so I might go in and just, with that flat side of my eraser, remember, and just back out some of this. All right, and this one I'm going to go in that circular motion though, and back out a little bit. So I can go back in and blend a little bit more now. There we go. All right, and if I need to really back out some, get that. Like I said, it's a lot easier to add than it is to subtract. So keep that in mind. And then, like I said, we can just back out maybe just a little bit more in here. You want to get that contrast going so that I have areas that are super light and then areas that are really dark, okay? All right, then just go back in, clean up your edges, make it look nice and neat, and make sure you sign it at the top there. And that will be the third page of our drills that we would be doing. Okay, the last part of our shading worksheet is going to be recreating this picture but a little bit bigger, and it's called drawing with a grid system. So if you notice that these little boxes here, that there's a grid on top of it that make them little boxes. These are all actually squares, so that's going to make it very easy for us to do this grid. So what I want you to do is grab your ruler and you're going to hold it right next to that box there, and you're going to draw your first line all the way down. All right, so now I'm going to count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, okay? So I want to make sure that you can get your 4 rows, and you're just holding the pencil at the top here, drawing a line down so that you have your rows here, okay? And you're going to do 4 as well. So I'm going to make that one be right over here. All right, right next to that is where we drew that. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. So now I'm going to do the same thing at the top. I'm going to hold this at the top so that I have a straight line. Make sure you have a straight line, and you're going to draw that. Now, draw another line right underneath it while you're holding that ruler nice and steady. So then I have my 4 boxes there. So I have to count. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going down. So I'm going to have to make sure I can get 5 rows. 2, 3, and I'm making sure that those are straight, right? 4, and then my last one. So it's just going to fit. Some of you may have a ruler that's a little bit thinner in your pack. That's fine too. Just make sure you have a little bit of space there so it's not right next to that. So now we have the exact same grid in squares, just enlarged, so that we're going to get this image a little bit bigger. And when I go to start this, what you're going to do is you're going to recreate each box inside of those boxes. All right, so if I have a box, let's just say, I'm going to show you how I would get started. when I look at each box on its own, all right, so there's a box there. When I look at each box in my head, I kind of do this where I divide it up this way. All right, so I look at that box and I say, okay, that line right there is about halfway at this point here in my picture. So I'm going to draw that, and then right now it ends almost near the end. So I'm going to put a little mark there and say, okay, that first box is what I'm doing. A little bit, about halfway up like that, is where the shading is. We don't even see, we barely see this corner of the skull right there. Okay, so we're just doing shading. So that top part there is going to be curved, and notice that grayscale. So it's going to be a little bit lighter, and then it's going to get darker. And if you want to do that shading, you know, later you can, but try to lay down some of that now, and it's just going to be a little bit more fuzzy there. Okay, then I'm going to go look at the next box. The next box is a little bit tricky. You might want to extend that line yourself. And you can say, okay, well, this pretty much starts in the corner, this top of the skull, and it goes up to maybe, I would say, a little bit below this halfway mark. Okay, so I'm going to start that and go a little bit below that halfway mark. And then I'm going to go to the third box and say, okay, that's going to continue all the way down to that next intersection there of those two lines. So that's going to go down to there. All right, this next one just has some shading in it. So again, I didn't do all the shading. So let's go back to box number 2. That's going to be up here where it's going to be a little bit darker up here and then get lighter. And same thing over here. It's going to come around. But that goes up a little bit higher. And then this one has, I'm not sure what that is in the background, but it just has like a little item there, and then a little item in the corner there. And then you can do your shading, you know, around that, because those are a lighter shade of gray. And it's going to cross over. And just have a little bit of, you can see how that kind of crosses over just a little bit there. All right, so now I'm going to go down to, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go to my 5th box. And that is going to start over almost near that corner again, and it ends right before the end of that box, about right there. So it's almost like connecting the dots. I've kind of gone in there and say, okay, it kind of goes like this. It has like this little curve right there. All right. The next box, pretty light everywhere, but has a little bit of that shading going on, and it looks like it's in the middle there. So you're going to keep going. Take a note, this is that just a little like a thing in the skull here that's going to come down right next to the, and you can just get it in there for now. And you're going to keep going every step of the way to see what is in that box, and just recreate, just focus on that box only. All right, and remember, draw light so you can go back in and make any adjustments if you need to. If some of these lines are hard for you to see, you can go back in with your ruler and just darken them up so you can see exactly what is in each box. Okay, I've gone in and done just about all the basic outlining of everything per box. If you want to, like when you get to the flower, if you want to do this whole group of 6 boxes at the same time, that's fine. That might help you get the whole flower in there. But I've gone in and just done some basics. I haven't blended anything yet, but I've just gone in to make sure that everything is where it should be or close enough. Remember, this takes practice, so I don't want you to get discouraged. Don't worry about what your result is going to be. I just want you to try. Normally you would maybe do your lines a little bit lighter on your grid if you were actually doing an enlargement of something. Some people even project a grid, however you want to do it, but then you could go in and erase these afterwards. But this really helps you learn how to do your shading, enlarge something without tracing, that kind of stuff. So let's go in now and we're going to start to blend. So again, I'm going to blend in the same direction that I drew. And I have to keep looking at this as well. I don't want to forget this now, my sample. So I want to go in and get that. That's a little bit feathered out at the top there. All right, then go over. Now notice that there's a lot of gray in this area, so I'm just going to use what's on my blending tool to get that in there. And same over here. I'm going to get that in there like that, and then really blend that dark area, especially around this part of the skull over here. And I can blend it up into the next box. That's okay, because you want it to go together, right? So look at things as shapes as well. That's going to really help you. I'm going into this eye over here now, so it's a little bit lighter right in here. And then you have that real dark area. And then just be prepared to go back in and either lighten up some things, darken up some things. Get a little bit of shading in here. That's pretty dark in there. Oops. Inside the nose. All the teeth. The teeth were a little bit tricky, but just count them out as you draw them so that you can see what you're doing in there. And like I said, just use your blending tool to get some of those other areas blended. So go in and in between some areas. You can see that this kind of goes in this direction. So blend that out. All right, so you're going to keep working on blending everything into the rows. Really work on the rows separate and look at this to see where those shadows are that you can see deeper into the rows. All right, and how it's folded, and then just get the little bit of the lighter shading then around it as well. So I'm going to finish shading this out and see what kind of contrast I need to add, or if I need to back out anything. Okay, I've gone back in and blended everything. I still see a few spots that maybe could be blended a little bit more. Go back in, get all that blended. And then I have pretty good contrast. I have some areas that are completely white, and then I have some areas that are the darkest black I can get with my ebony pencil. So my last step is to just go in and clean it up before I turn it in. You can leave your grid lines showing. And remember, this is based on how hard you try. Really take your time with this. This is your last big project. You do have a final, but this is your last big project. So as soon as you get that all done, check your contrast, everything that's on there, you've blended it, go ahead and sign it and get it turned in.